If you're interested in sewing, chances are that the creative process fascinates you. Yet sometimes it's helpful to have inspiration for adding details to make a style your own. Welcome pattern designer and author Amy Bjarkman, who has mastered the art of personalizing patterns. Amy, welcome to Sewing with Nancy, and we took a challenge, one pattern to see how many looks we could give it.
Changing the style and the look can be as easy as changing the buttons or as fun and creative as adding needle felting. This first version of our featured jacket highlights the fabric. The swing silhouette with the mandarin collar lets the fabric be the focal point. We'll then use this easy sew style to add our creative touches.
One easy pattern, 6 terrific looks. That's what's coming next on Sewing with Nancy.
Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, is made possible by Baby Lock, a complete line of sewing, quilting, and embroidery machines and sergers. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Madeira, specializing in embroidery, quilting, and special effect threads, because creativity is never black and white. Koala Studios, fine sewing furniture custom built in America. Clover, makers of sewing, knitting, quilting, and embroidery products for over 25 years. Experience the Clover difference. Amazing Designs and Class A Needles.
Our first look of this jacket was to create it just as the pattern was designed, but having the fabric as the showcase. And Amy, we have 2 unique fabrics here, with the jacket in the short version and the 3/4 length version.
Yes, this is a contemporary, just cotton print. Love the modern look that you get and just how the fabric really is showcased. And this, yes, it's really nice in the cotton with the drape. And here you can see one of the details, which is the bell sleeve. I'll show you a few more details over here on the other jacket. This particular jacket is, the closure is actually a button covered over a giant snap. I think this is really a fun detail.
And for those of you who are not fond of putting in buttonholes and buttons, this is a great option. And with big buttons, you don't want to have those huge buttonholes.
Exactly, exactly. It just is a nice, clean look. The mandarin collar is real simple, easy to create. And then I'm going to spin it around and show you the back, because this is a really fun accent. The inverted pleat that is also has the accent of the tab. And again, it's a place for fun button detail or embellishing, just to do something creative with it. So it's always fun to have a look coming and going. I'm going to spin it back around here. And you can just see it's a very, very, very flattering style.
We have cotton, we have twill, there's some other options for fabric.
Yes, I have really enjoyed looking at the fabrics and through the upholstery fabrics and seeing what you can do. Many of those are both right sides can be either side of the fabric, so that can be a fun fabric to look for.
And you'll see a variety of different fabrics as we progress through this mini-series. We've used a specific pattern. It's called
the chinois coat.
Jacket or coat, and it has some basic pattern pieces. If you're not using that pattern, just look for a pattern that has very plain styling, because we're going to be doing embellishment and doing some changes as we go along. Basic front piece, back piece, sleeve sections. And then we mentioned earlier about the collar. So it's a larger collar, which gives us a palette
for adding embellishment, whether it be needle felting or applique. And the belt too is a fun little detail on the back.
And Amy has the belt in the higher position, kind of across the shoulder blades, but you'll see we can change the position. So these large palettes of pattern pieces, I think, are what are important when you're choosing a pattern to give it a lot of variety. So that's our first option, choosing the fabric and making it the showcase. For a second terrific look, make a statement with a framed, supersized covered button. We added needle felting to the covered button fabric, an accent that can be completed in mere minutes. Then add a framing, a rectangle of fabric behind the button. It's now button art. Amy and I'd like to show you just three ways of working with covered buttons. And when I think about the past, covered buttons were small. They're not any longer.
No, we love the buttons a little bit larger to really make a statement on a garment.
If we take a close-up look of the finished jacket, you've added some nice detail.
We have the yarn embellished with needle felting, and then the frame that you mentioned, which can be created with a small piece of wool, and then we frayed the edges. Again, what I love about this jacket is the fact that there are no buttonholes necessary, and I'm going to open up and show you this fun, large, oversized snap that, again, is just one of those details that makes this jacket really one of a kind and so customizable.
It's functional, but it has style.
Yes.
Now, the covered button, perhaps some of you have made them, and they come in a package, and you get a little pattern how large to cut the circle of fabric. But we're going to add the embellishment with hand needle felting, and I like the way you make quick embellishments.
Needle felting offers such a quick and easy way to have fun with fabric and fiber. I'm going to show you first of all the tools that we use. This is the needle felting tool, and what I love about it too is it's safe. You unlock the mechanism and then you have a protective cover, so you're always going to be able to protect yourself from these needles. And these needles have barbs on them, and what the barbs do is entangle the fiber into the base fabric. So I'm going to show you that.
And you have to work on a base.
You do. And the nice thing about this base is it's calibrated so that it will not, your needles will not hit the bottom of the base.
Sure.
So it really is so comfortable and easy to use. And the mat, again, small, easy to transport. So I'll show you a little bit of how I created the buttons that we just looked at. One thing to think about is just the fact that you're going to have a little bit of an allowance. So when you're designing, you're going to be designing kind of in the center of the button. So I'm going to start out with this yarn, and what we're doing is kind of a window pane effect with the yarn. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do a couple rows of this particular variegated yarn, which always adds a fun accent.
If you've had a bad day, this is a really good.
It is. It is. It is a wonderful stress releaser as well as creative tool. And here you can see where this fabric has migrated through the material. And then we're going to add a little piece of the purple. And then maybe we'll also add another piece of a green accent as well. But you can really have fun and just do something abstract and unique. And it doesn't, both buttons don't have to match necessarily.
And then you're going to wrap that around the button.
Exactly.
Top of it.
Let me show you how we do that. We're simply going to, again, you can see how the fiber has come through here. We're going to place the fabric over the button, centering it on the back, and then we're going to, the prongs on this inside of this button cover allow you to pressure the fabric into the place. So it does take a little bit of time, but you're eventually able to secure. In fact, then we'll be adding the cover, the back cover to the button.
Now, if you would like to make a variation, this time using ribbon, which I think is a very nice option, you put the fabric on first.
Yes, this is where you can see how we attach the fabric. And now we're going to have fun just stretching different ribbons over the button, different directions and different methods. You can just have a lot of fun with that.
And then the back snaps right on. You have to work at that a little bit.
Right.
Amy, you're known for vintage fabric, and
my favorite fabric is this bark cloth. You can see the fun design, real contemporary, retro. Just a small piece allows you to make a really unique statement with your button.
Fuse some interfacing on the wrong side and wrap the vintage fabric around this. If you'd like to make a frame, just hand stitch a little fabric around this area, and when you put your buttons over it, you have button art. Easy to Sew Fleece is the perfect palette to showcase two terrific techniques. For this next option, we started with a free form needle felting design. It adds great impact. We then enhanced the jacket even further with whip-stitched edges. You'll enjoy learning the magical tip that ensures that all stitching will be perfectly even. As we take a look at the embellishment area, that rose feature of this jacket, you'll see that it's another felted technique, another felted area. Done with the palette of that large pattern piece on the jacket, it has really fun impact. Roving yarns and extra twisted yarns have been embedded into the fabric. And you can see again how it migrates to the wrong side. The buttonhole covers, again, used covered buttons. We did a little migrating on or felting on the buttons themselves. In the book that accompanies today's program, as well as with the pattern, you'll receive the embellishment, this outline of the rose. You could use another design if you'd like, and to transfer it to the fleece fabric. This is traditional fleece you'd make for outerwear. It's hard to transfer it because of the nap in the fabric. So we have water-soluble stabilizer, and then just outline or trace the design, this very free motion design, follow the lines better than I'm doing right now, with a pen, marking pen, and then we'll pin this to the fabric. Now we're working with samples, as you might guess. So I have a smaller piece you'll be putting on the lower edge of the jacket or wherever you'd like to place it, and here you can see the outline of the rose. We've done this so that now I can just do some straight stitching. And as when going through the mountains or around curvy roads, I use a shorter, I go slower in my car, and now when I get to a curve, I'll just shorten the stitch length a little bit so that I can maneuver those curves and have even flowing. Now this will just take a few minutes to work around the design. In essence, all you want to do is make sure that the design is transferred. If you've never used water-soluble stabilizer, I'd like to tell you or show you the magic of it. You don't dissolve it all, you just tear away most of it, and I hold the stitching by my hand, and the needle perforates the stabilizer so it comes off easily. And I usually sometimes save some of this. You never know when you might need a small part, and you just keep removing it, and then you have the outline of where to put the embellishment. Now, Amy, your design has been almost, the total of the water-soluble stabilizer is almost gone.
Correct. We just have a little bit left where these stitches are intertwined. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and actually use the water to help me remove this stabilizer, and you can see where we're just patting it, and then eventually the material just flakes off.
Sure.
And so it really is a wonderful product for transferring the design, and there you can see how it then is removed.
A few minutes ago, we showed you how to do needle felting with the hand needle felter and the brush. Well, now we're going to go the electronic, mechanical way.
Yes, this is a wonderful machine. There are 12 needles, and it works very similar to a sewing machine in its method. It's just the up and down movement, though, of the needles, the barbed needles, entwining the fiber. And the fiber that we're going to be using is a wool roving. And essentially what I'm going to do is take off small little pieces, and using the design that was created through the stabilizer, I'm going to put little pieces in place and follow the outline of my stitches. So
now, unlike a sewing machine, this doesn't have any thread.
No thread, right. You're putting down
Right.
all the fiber you want as you go. Lower the presser foot, and then again, I'll guide the machine, and you can see just exactly what happens with the, let me lift it up here, the fiber being entangled. The next step too, after you finish doing the solid colors within your design, is maybe you want an outline. So what I've done here is actually take roving and make it a yarn essentially to do an outline. So here I'll go ahead and show you what is involved there. The outline I almost put directly over that stitch line that we created. And again, will be...
And you can work a little bit at a time.
That's what's nice, and it's pretty forgiving too. If you make a mistake, a lot of times you can remove that mistake. I'll show you just the beginnings of this outline that I was working on. So there you can see how we, step by step, and then I'll bring in some green roving.
Why don't you do that?
And do the leaf maybe. So here you can see again the outline. And it's fun to use the fiber, variegate it. You can get some definition and dimension depending on how thick you actually lay the fiber as you felt, and then you can always again add another layer of material to enhance the design, even color and all sorts of.
Now, sometimes I've done felting with just scraps of wool or scraps of other fabrics, so if you didn't have roving, you could certainly put other embellishment in there, and the more you stitch, it changes the color.
Exactly. You can see here how it really embeds and leaves a really nice shape and design, and again, we can add a little additional depth to the color just by adding another layer of fiber.
So if there were some areas that were weak in color, you just go back and restitch.
Exactly. That's one thing I love about needle felting is just how forgiving it is. And many times if you make a mistake, you can actually pull out your fiber and
Sure.
remove it, and it does not squelch your design.
And we'll let Amy do some more stitching, but let's us take a close-up look at the finished design. And you can see you can add as much of the fiber as you would like. You could fill it in, you could enhance the edges. We talked a little bit earlier about the covered buttons, and the buttons have just a hint of some of the details. So whether you're using hand felting or machine felting, it's a beautiful accent for your jacket. After we did the needle felting on this jacket, we knew there had to be an additional finishing touch, and the whip stitching around the outer edges and the hemline were the finishing touch that we were looking for. And Amy, just point that out for our viewers.
Well, here we have, you can see a 2-layer sample where we actually went through the facing and the front here on the jacket edge. And then I'm going to show you where we did a single layer. And this single layer is through the sleeve, and the hem would be the single layer whip stitch.
So you can finish your garment any way you'd like, and the technique that we are going to show you works on fabric that doesn't ravel.
Yes, a non-woven.
So with this fleece, it's a perfect element for us. And as Amy mentioned, we've just added the facing as the pattern called for, and you could make believe this is the hem. This is My Life is in Samples, but here's make believe this would be the hem. It could be single layer, it could be double layer. We're going to assume it's single layer just for ease of working with this. You can see some stitching. That stitching is going to come out, so you can do some basting stitches just with a long running stitch on your sewing machine just to keep these edges together. Now you could just do that whip stitch at this point, but if you want the stitches perfectly spaced, we always like gadgets and ways of making things easy. I'm going to use a rotary cutter, ruler, and mat. And you may think, rotary cutter, are we going to cut this off? Well, not quite. The blade is unique. It has little divots in it, and each divot is perfectly spaced so that an indentation or a cut will be made in the fabric as the pizza wheel goes around. About 1/2 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch from the edge, and I'm starting at the 3/4 of an inch from the corner, so I'm not going to cut way off the edge, Amy.
This is just amazing. I love this tool.
And it really, now I'm going through all the layers right now, so as I cut, and I'm just going to move my ruler so that I get a fairly even, I hope, whip stitch, and then assume that this is the hemline. Here we go. I'll just add or place the ruler, excuse me, at the same area, starting at the stitching line so that I'm not having a divot or a cut in the fabric, and I'll show you what happens because of this non-woven or non-ravelly fabric. As you make the little divots, you get openings, if you can see them. Let's
Real
make
tiny, but boy, they come in handy to keep a real symmetrical look to your work.
Now you have your thread, double heavier weight thread.
Yes, and this, you want to have a thread that's thick enough to really showcase the thread. And then we'll find one of the holes that had been made by the tool and by the blade, and we'll just, again, be looking for these holes as we work through and whip stitch this edge. And you could always fold it over too, but I just, since it's a single layer and it has a nice finished edge, it's not necessary.
And sometimes it's difficult to get the spacing just right. So this is a fun way of doing it. You could use the same edge on a fleece blanket or whatever the case may be.
I think there's so many uses for this.
You know, this is what I do when I listen to television, you know, just watching TV. So you can finish this third look, the fleece look, by adding the whip stitch. Combine a farmstead, committed historians, and dedicated quilters. And what do you get? The answer, a refurbished old barn that is now the Wisconsin Museum of Quilts and Fiber Arts. The Quilt Barn Museum has become a must-see destination for quilt and fiber enthusiasts. I'd like you to welcome Terry Kirschner, who is now the president of this all-volunteer organization, and she is here to introduce you to this very magical place. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you, Nancy.
You know, our program goes beyond Wisconsin, much further than Wisconsin, and I invited you to be our guest because the Wisconsin Quilt and Fiber Museum has become a destination place.
Yes, it has. It actually has been for a while, but now we've just expanded our footprint, so to speak.
And it started with purchasing some land, a vision of many people I know, but purchasing a small farmstead.
Yeah, we have a small farmstead out on the edge of town in Cedarburg, Wisconsin, and it's about 2.5 acres, and we saw it more as a place where we could build. We started in the farmhouse, and then we moved with vision to create an exhibit space in the barn.
And having quilts displayed in a timber constructed barn must be beautiful.
It is, because you've got the height. So you've got these beautiful, huge quilts. You know, imagine a king-size quilt. If you put it on a regular wall, it kind of just takes over the space.
Sure.
It looks actually very appropriate when you've got it on a 2-story timber frame barn.
This has been a long journey for your group.
Yes, it has. It started off as the Wisconsin Quilt History Project back in the late 80s. And then it merged into the Wisconsin Museum of Quilts and Fiber Arts when we realized our documentation program, we needed places for the quilts that people were donating us.
And what a wonderful area to showcase them in, but you had to raise a lot of money.
We did. It took us a long time. We raised it mainly $50, $25, a lot of bake sales, as we said. But we ended up raising almost $1.5 million to build this facility.
Now, earlier I mentioned historians and conservationists were interested in this project, and that's where the majority of your funds came from.
Yes, we have a wonderful following in historic preservation. As you know, Cedarburg is very proud of its history, and we have a lot of very unique historic preservation sites there. And our little farmstead is one of the last remaining German farmsteads available. So we tried to keep it as natural looking as we can.
I like your motto where it's create, preserve, educate.
Yes. Well, as you know, as a quilter, fabric person, we like to bring in the fiber arts to help build things, show people how to do it, and then preserve our history. That's really where the basis of our project began, is in the documentation stage, finding out why people made quilts, why they were so special. And we've written our book on that. And we've also taken those stories now and we've collected them. We've got nearly 8,000 documentations now.
Impressive to know what the stories are behind the quilts. What a great thing. Now, you also have, I mentioned earlier, a totally volunteer group, which I think is quite phenomenal.
Yes, we're totally volunteer, not a paid member on the staff. And we've got a very dedicated group. I would say we probably only have about 150 regular volunteers, but we have a very dedicated board. We have 15 on our board, and we meet every week, especially now that we're open in the new facility. But we meet and we do everything from the lawn work to cleaning the toilets to greeting our guests.
And guests, you have quite a few guests a day.
We do. We're averaging, now that we have the new facility open, we're averaging between 40 and 60, and we get a lot of international visitors too.
So it's a destination to see beautiful quilts and architecture, and there's a learning facility.
Yes, we have 2 large classrooms in the lower level of the barn, and we do classes. We had David Taylor, a nationally known quilter, and we'll have you next year at Quilt University.
Well, Terry, what a wonderful experience for others to appreciate quilts in such an architectural showcase. It's phenomenal.
Well, thank you for this opportunity.
You're welcome. If you'd like to learn more about the Wisconsin Quilt Museum, go to nancyzieman.com, where you'll find all things Sewing with Nancy. Click on Nancy's Corner, and then you'll be able to find Terry Kirshner and the Wisconsin Quilt Museum. Also at that site, you'll be able to watch the most 52 current Sewing with Nancy programs online, streaming video. So if you'd like to re-watch part of this program or watch another program, you can do so at your convenience. Next time, we'll be back with our finishing program of our episodes of One Easy Pattern, 6 Terrific Looks with Amy Barackman. I hope you'll join us then. Thanks for joining us, and bye for now.
Nancy has written a fully illustrated book entitled One Easy Pattern, 6 Terrific Looks that includes the Indigo Junction Chinois pattern plus all the information from this 2-part series. It's $19.99 plus shipping and handling. To order the book, call 800-336-8373 or visit our website at sewingwithnancy.com/2523. Order item number BK2523. One Easy Pattern, 6 Terrific Looks. Credit card orders only. To pay by check or money order, call the number on the screen for details. Visit Nancy's website at nancyzieman.com to see additional episodes, Nancy's blog, and more. Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, has been brought to you by Baby Lock, Madeira Threads, Koala Studios, Clover, Amazing Designs, and Class A Needles. Closed captioning funding provided by Rowenta. Sewing with Nancy is a co-production of Nancy Zieman Productions and Wisconsin Public Television.